Evening, Steve. Van, how are you?
Fine, thanks.
You all been outside, hopefully getting some sunlight, some tropical 50-degree weather, 60.
Very nice, isn't it?
Yeah, it sure has been.
Evening, Troy.
Clint, how are you?
Good, sir. Yourself?
Oh, doing well. We'll give folks obviously some more time here if you all are okay with that.
I gotta get to my. Oh, there's Floyd Bartow Jr.
Clint, I know we had a highway shop meeting tonight, I think. You know what time
We
that
did. We did. Chair Williamson is tracking. He is hoping that after they conclude that several of them might be able to join us. The meeting, I believe, started at 5:30.
Oh, right on. Okay. Yeah, I heard from Chad. Mark, Chad. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Linda, we can. Welcome.
Okay.
Sean, welcome. We're gonna give folks a few more minutes. I know we had some double bookings here this evening, so maybe we'll start at 7:05 or so. At least give Marty a moment. He's usually with us.
Marty's trying to connect right now. He's having a little difficulties in pulling the link, but hopefully he'll get connected here momentarily. Troy, we also have Lee Van Landite has intentions of joining. He's got some difficulties in pulling the link up as well.
Okay. Okay, maybe we'll wait for Lee and then we'll have 9. I think Marty will probably have a quorum. A couple of the folks from the highway committee have traditionally joined us, so we'll probably have a quorum. If not when we start, soon thereafter.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, everyone. Do you think we have a quorum? Shall I call the meeting to order?
We have 8. Clint said Lee is coming on board here in just a few minutes.
Okay.
We don't right now have a quorum, but I think that we will, Marty.
All right. Well, all right. This is my first foray with fiber optic hookup.
You sound great.
Yeah, I think I'll stay. Probably I won't fade out and go away. So
Good. If you weren't one of my commissioners, I'd make a joke about how good you look as well, but that wouldn't be appropriate. So
well, yes. Can you see me? Am I
No, I
showing my
can't.
image? No, I've got it blocked out.
Well,
black screen always makes me look better.
Well, out of respect for folks' time, I think we can, I'm comfortable getting started if you are.
Yeah, okay. I'll call the meeting to order. This is our 4th and final meeting on strategic planning, and Troy Magid of Southwest Regional Planning has led us in this process and done a stellar job. So I will turn the meeting over to Troy.
Good. Honestly, Marty, your connection sounds great, to be honest with you. All joking aside, that sounds like that's working well.
Wonderful. It's wonderful.
Well, thank you all again for sticking with us and joining. Like Marty said, this is our last night of this format. I'll share briefly, as I have in the past, the the timeline moving forward. It is my most it's my goal. March 16th, I believe, next Tuesday, you have a board meeting.
Yes.
And I don't know if that agenda is set. If you want to put an informational piece, I was hoping to have a summary for folks, and maybe a handout if I can get it to you for folks to start chewing on. But then April 20th is my target date to have a draft of the document for review and consideration. Let's see, we have a Joanne Croulette's coming in. Bear with me, excuse me. Okay.
Just the radio.
Perfect, okay.
WRCO.
I know, Joanne, perfect, okay. So that's my target, is to have a draft document for you on April 20th. Today, we're really going to dive into the meat of everything that we've talked about, pitching or positioning over to implementation. As I was trying to sort and categorize different ways to look at the projects, the work, the goals that you all have identified, I decided for now to kind of put them into 3 big overarching categories, and I'll go over those. we're going to spend a little more time focusing. You had a lot of what I would call operational efficiency goals, and that's good. Those are really good, practical, actionable things. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time on those, just because many of them are what I would say should be standard operating procedure. And so to spend time discussing whether we should do them is not the highest and best use of our time. So I'd like to spend a fair amount of time today looking at some of the bigger capital improvements expenses you have coming down the pipeline, and then some of the discretionary services and enterprises, and just start forming thoughts about how you all might make decisions regarding those in the future. I don't expect to come out of here with any hard decisions, but certainly some information about priorities and how the board can make decisions around those in the future. And then the last part of the agenda, we're going to spend some time talking about the ongoing living piece of the plan. This isn't something we do and put on the shelf. So the plan, do, study, act, continual improvement process, and what that could look like, and how you can make sure this continues after year one. Any questions on that? Does that sound like a reasonable agenda?
Sounds good.
I will share here for those of you who learn by reading as I do. So here's how I've looked at the three sets of projects, tasks, duties, and areas of improvement. Some are what I'm calling kind of general culture building projects. These are, many of them, low-hanging fruit, things that you can do with a little difficulty. The others I will mention are operational efficiencies, effectiveness projects. These could be large activities, large projects, or they could be small things, but they will have a measurable impact on hours saved and dollars saved. And then down here is that third category, the kind of the big ticket items, the big dollar items. And we'll think about both the mandatory and discretionary aspects. Could I ask someone to watch? There it is. Excuse me, I'm splitting my screen. I'm trying to make sure I see somebody who's coming into the meeting. Welcome. I've got a phone number 2007. Just joined us. Could I ask you that?
This is Lee Van Landite.
Hey, Lee. Welcome.
I'm still trying to get on with the computer, but I'm getting nowhere for the last 15 minutes or so.
Okay.
So I'll be here until I can get on online with the computer.
Okay. So that's how I've looked at all the projects, kind of in these three categories. And you could cut all these projects 1,000 different ways, but to me, these seemed reasonable because they suggest a level of effort as well as impact. So we'll get into what that means. And I talk about culture building projects. These are things that we've done in-house and we've seen in other counties. These kind of activities will make the county culture one that is always looking to improve, always remembering who it is, what its focus is. These are very, very simple things. Once we finalize a mission and vision, put it on the website, put it on your business cards. When you go out for new hires, put on your position descriptions. When you have budgets at budget time, having your departments put together a budget narrative, a page, a half page, speaking to how this budget will implement the strategic plan. You have all talked about this, better onboarding of new staff and county board. What is the plan? What does it mean? What is your role in implementing it? We've talked about performance evaluations, and I can't get a beat on whether they're done, whether they're done countywide or whether they're not done, and that's fine. But as that process is developed or evolves, looking at the strategic plan, looking at your goals, and start asking some questions. You know, here's where we as a county are going. How have you helped get us there this last year? Those sort of things. We've talked a little bit about training, very specific stuff like county board training, lean training. But building into your training budgets and your training requests, operational improvement training, how to implement the strategic plan. And then I had here celebration budget. I think you can do a lot with a little bit. So maybe that's something to consider. We talked about being an employer of choice. You have identified how much you value your employees. So considering as you tuck away some money for next year or the year after, even though money is tight, a couple of dollars for your departments or somebody to get together, not in the day-to-day. Those things go a long way, particularly if the salaries are not where you would want them or the employee would want them. So we'll flesh out this project for ideas, things that you can help build culture in the community. Build culture in the county. Does that sort of framework make sense based on what you've talked about with your core values, focusing on being an employer of choice? Anything jump out at you as crazy here or reckless or spot on?
Troy?
Yes.
We, in the past, when I first got on the board, every year we had a dinner out at the college in the cafeteria, well, in the dining room area, private room. Angie Sorensen catered the thing, and we had a great meal. And that was a nice get together. It was right around the holidays, and I enjoyed that. It was something that we should do, and it was kind of to acquaint everyone with the campus at that time, but also it was a get together of board. And I don't know why we discontinued it. I think probably, well, obviously this year because of the pandemic, but we didn't do it in the last several years. The interest began to fall off, and Angie, I guess, didn't feel the need to do it at that point, and no one ordered her to do it. So, but those kinds of things are very important, I believe.
We also always had a meal at Pine Valley once a year.
Yes, we did. Yes.
I take my staff out about twice a year. Well, we did prior to COVID. A couple years back, we canoed the Pine River. Last fall or a year ago in the spring, or maybe it was a year and a half ago at this point, who knows? Gosh, time. We took all 7 of our folks out to Bethel Horizons up by Governor Dodge, and we spent a half day, 2 meals, 7 of us, and then a high ropes course. We got it out of there for $500. I think this stuff gets cut because it's easy. It's not very financially impactful, but there can be a lot done with a little. And I think there's great ways to celebrate. Maybe it's even giving them some hours to go out to the county forest and do some thinking and planning around their work, something social. So you can, as we put these into the plan, and I'm assuming you're seeing my PowerPoint, right? Am I sharing the correct screen?
Yes.
Okay. I'll put these in there as suggestions. Of course, you can all pick them up or not to implement, but based on what I've heard about who you want to be as a county, your goals of retention, the quality of people you have, I think these would be very valuable. They're also very low-hanging fruit. So let's move on to the higher hanging fruit, I guess. There's these aspects here called operational effectiveness is what I'm calling them. These items generally can be seen as standard operating procedure, or they should be, and some of them you shared with me are already underway. I've tried to put them into kind of 3 buckets as well. Effectiveness activities that impact the budget, that impact your operations, that impact your personnel. So again, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but from what I've heard, what I've experienced, and what you're already doing, these are some things that I think we can drop in there. We talked about analyzing your indirect rate to see how you can improve recovery on grants or reducing your costs. You have talked about a procurement process improvement. We talked about, I think, evaluating service fees and fines. Are they where they should be? Are they on market? Should they be a little higher if that's one of your goals? And then these 2 questions, just as budgetary measures, every budget asking your department head, what would you do with 20% less funding? What would you do with 20% more funding? Just gentle nods and pokes to get folks thinking about how much more value they can bring, or as you had to do last fall, how would you respond to unexpected cuts, right? Building that in your budget narrative, having folks think critically about how they would respond, is a fairly simple practice, but it can really get folks thinking critically about their budgets, as well as the bigger projects, these indirect rates, the procurement process, and so forth. The operational aspects, some of you talked about, well, centralizing operations now that you have an administrator, and I know that process is underway. One of the examples was given was your, that's the procurement, excuse me, that should say payroll. I think it was your payroll process, right? So you talked about having a fairly cumbersome payroll process at the county level, but a different one over at Pine Valley. So looking at those processes, I already have payroll system. So we'll tease out some of those, but again, those are things that I've already heard that we can capture. And so I don't want to spend too much time on here, but I do think it's important to kind of capture and document them so you can track and measure your progress and make sure it's working. The third aspect is personnel. You've talked about an HR manual. You've talked about meeting your staff, your salary targets. But then there's also staffing analysis. So I've spoken to this a little bit, but you have a lot of mandatory services. The county requires that you provide certain services. The state requires that you provide certain services. The state doesn't necessarily mandate how you do so. So just as you brought on an administrator, you're centralizing your operations. As the opportunity arises or the need arises, you can look more intentionally at staff. And you can do that two ways. I have here looking at tasks. So when you're creating a position description or when you're looking to backfill, often what we do is we just grab that old position description off the shelf and reuse it. When you have a vacancy, it's a great opportunity to look at the tasks that are needed and the skills. Are there emerging skills? Are the skills evolving? Are there skills or jobs that are expiring? Perhaps that's a matter of customer base decreasing, the position not being mandatory, evolving and emerging. That could mean new technologies coming on board. So really thinking critically about that, how that task is completed. And then the workforce gaps. When you have a vacancy, there's 5 ways to fill a workforce gap. You can buy it, build it, borrow it, redeploy it, or simply not fill it, right? So when you have a workforce gap, buy it means, do you want to rehire? Are you going to rehire full-time, have that person in-house? Can you move someone up? Do you have a good succession planning in-house? Have you built the skills to move a person into that role? Borrowing is kind of contracting. Would you contract it out? Redeploying, a little tougher with counties, but as you think about your increased collaboration with the city and the county, are there shared services the two could have? Could the county do something that you don't need to do? Could you move a task from one department to the other, save some time? And then lastly, do you still need the position? So that's a tricky one to analyze. It's very easy to just want to cut a position and save money, but that also harms the service. So a couple of tools there to look at staffing analysis when positions open up or when the time comes. So we can spend as much time as you want on this. Does this all sound like stuff you've kind of been speaking to or have experienced or started on? Is there anything here that's really earth-shaking, or does it sound reasonable? And I didn't put all my notes on here. I was just trying to give some indicators.
Well, I believe that, and once again, I'm getting back to procedural things, but I believe if we have the correct procedure in place, then that answers most of the questions that employees and department heads have, okay? And it eliminates some of this, well, how come over there, we hear this a lot, they can do it and we can't. And I believe that the new administrator position will provide that kind of efficiency and continuity that we've needed in that situation for quite some time.
Troy, everything looks good to me on this slide. The previous slide, I thought we did want procurement as a to improve. Oh wait, never mind. Well, why I got confused on the next one is you got payroll twice. So
yeah,
that
I did.
was all.
I was stretched throwing these notes together. So good catch. I do definitely have it in here.
Oh, that's great. Thanks.
Yep. Put it in the wrong bucket. Okay. So the thing is, that I've been struggling with as we walked through this, we've talked around some things and talked about some things. What I'd like to do is spend really a chunk of this meeting, as much time as we need within our window, excuse me, talking about the larger capital assets that I've heard that you need that are tied to mandatory services. And I guess if we can come out of here with a priority, that'd be great. I think there's probably more unknowns. And so what I wanted to do was kind of get some thoughts on how will you as a board prioritize and make decisions on these larger expenses. I have 3 that I've heard: a sheriff's office and jail, an ambulance garage, and a salt shed. Is there anything else that's out there that is known, that is part of a mandatory service or tied to mandatory?
So, Troy, if I can, this is Clint, if I can make a comment. So our ambulance garage, I think by statute is a requirement of a municipality. Mm-hmm. We help fill the void in the gap to provide services and partnership to reach out further than that. But I think that's a mandated service for municipalities that the county helps augment and partner with.
Okay. So let's grab that and we'll move that down the road.
But you could substitute emergency services for that ambulance garage, because we do provide emergency services in a broad construct. So we do need housing for that.
Yeah, I've been to Derek's quarters. You do. Are those tied to, is that kind of thinking around that's part of the sheriff's office, or is that to just update?
Right now we're talking about it in conjunction with the ambulance garage, of course.
Fine. Good. Okay.
But it is it's mandated. It's part of the services the county provides. So
yeah. Okay. Anything else on the horizon? Okay. Here's how I thought we might do this, and we can see what comes of it. Let's see, emergency services. And I can add to this, but I was thinking about what the decision points might be. This is what I came up with, and these are my short notes. Number 1 is the project begun, is something underway. Sometimes we run into that. We've already invested so much money in architecture fees, we're not going to turn back, blah, blah, blah.
Troy, I'm sorry. I just thought of another really important one that's on the horizon, and that's our radio tower project. So far, we only have funding to do the first study of it. And that's going to be big, big dollars along with the jail. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So, and I can add to these, but what things would inform your decisions on how to prioritize? I suspect your debt limit is such that you can't do all these at once, or all these even now. So we would have to choose a place to start. So has anything begun? Do you have partners, funding? Is there anybody that you can co-locate with, share services with, anything such as that? Do you have a location? Sometimes you don't even know where the thing's going to go, and that pushes the project out farther. Is there outside funding, grant funding, fee for service that could help recover the cost? What have been the impacts of not having done this yet? And then what are the impacts of further delay? What do you expect the cost to be? And then is this what you would call a critical service? Is there any way around doing this? Any other, and these are me sitting in my box here in Platteville.
Well, Troy, I think that a column that isn't there is regulatory. For instance, the jail inspector. He could come in tomorrow and say, you have to have a new jail. So that could really move that project up, to the front. The salt shed would be the same kind of thing where we're told, hey, your salt is leaching into, nearby water supply. So you better take remedial action immediately. So,
okay.
And I guess the same with the radio tower project. I mean, when I was in Melissa's position, chair of the LEJC, I got a nice letter from the various fire departments in the county telling us that it was on us to develop a radio system that was reliable and that they could count on to protect the lives and property of county residents. And I can dig that letter out, Melissa. I'll find it sometime.
I still have it.
Okay, good.
So have any of these begun? Is there any start on any of these in any meaningful way?
Yeah, the radio tower project, we hired a consultant that is evaluating our current system and gonna tell us what we have and what we need. We should have that by May. We paid for that with the borrowed funds this year. The consulting firm money was used from the borrowed funds.
Yeah, the emergency services, I mean, once again, that is being partnered in now with the ambulance garage. That is, yes, that is a municipal requirement, but we are the emergency services part of that, so.
Didn't we get a community member to donate something to that project?
Yes. And the ambulance garage per se has, a community member has promised funding for the building. But of course, we have borrowed funds that we want to put toward the installation, finishing the building and developing the emergency services portion of the project.
Didn't we already authorize some of our borrowed money to be spent on like architectural design or something?
Well, the engineering study that's being done of the site right now, yes. I think $56,000, Sean, I believe.
Okay, yeah. Kind of similar to the radio tower project.
Yeah.
So there's some architectural work being done on that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, that construction is going to start quite soon, I would think.
Any legwork at all on the sheriff's office or jail?
No, only talk.
Yeah. And then the salt shed?
Well, that was floated as a project, and we turned it down here a couple months ago. And I know they've gone back to the drawing board. I talked to Steve Williamson, and he told me, yeah, we're looking at some other solutions. So, I guess some preliminary discussion and planning has begun on that, but it's the money.
So for partners, Richland Center,
yeah,
is the partner here. It looks like for the emergency services building. Any non-county partners identified for the
Well, and then various townships, not all of them, but various townships.
Okay. What about the jail, the salt shed, or the radio tower? Any project partners associated with those?
No.
I think there is some potential that Bug Tussle, there might be a partnership with Bug Tussle for some towers, but we won't know until after the consultants finish their work.
Okay. Do you know where these will go? Do you know where the sheriff's office would go? Has there been any identification of a location?
No site.
Emergency services, if you're doing architectural, you must have a location, correct?
Mm-hmm. It's out at the city is donating land, and it's out with, the plan is to put it out at the, what do we call that? Industrial center, I guess, industrial park.
The north side there? Yeah,
on the north, near the fairgrounds.
Is this a centrally located salt shed? Is this going to be Richland Center, or is this out in the
periphery? No, this would be at the county shop. This is our main storage of salt, sand.
And then the radio tower, location for that?
They would be all over the county.
Yeah.
And we need them. Multiple, yeah.
Okay. Okay. And that's probably part of what the consultant's doing, is that evaluation of locations?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Any chance of supplementary or outside funding for a sheriff's office or jail? Nothing. Yep.
But why not? I don't know. Why not?
I was reading the screen. Yeah. I mean, I've not heard any at Iowa or Grant County, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. They both just built a new facility. For the emergency services, what I'll call outside funding, obviously is going to be, I assume, would have some money in it. The township served, would they have some money in the facility?
Well, they might. I don't know. Why not? Clint maybe has more insight into that. I don't know if he does right now. But
for the emergency services building, we have our donor, and then we have our money that we have set aside. Contribution from Richland Center is they're looking to lease us the land for no expenses. As far as townships, it would be most definitely you'd have to look at potentially townships that are being serviced. We've had several different townships outside of the district that do have concerns with using money taken from a county tax base and using it for a project that encompasses part of ambulance that includes ambulance district that does not service all townships. So there's conversations like that have been had, decision points to cross. But till you ask, until you request for the townships within the district, you wouldn't know until you did.
Right. Those conversations have been very amicable too.
Has there been any looking into the USDA community facilities funding for the ambulance service? Grant funding for something like that?
Can't tell you that. I'm sure that if it's available, then they've looked at it. But
okay.
I don't know.
That's the only one that I know of that may look at that. The CDBG funding, that's an eligible project, but the district is probably not eligible. I think we have looked into that. The salt shed, I imagine, is completely county funded.
Well, Is Steve on this meeting? Steve Williamson? No.
I don't think so. No, he's not joining us.
I'm not tracking I'm not tracking at this time any other type of funding sources. When the request came through last with finance and personnel, it was to utilize undesignated general fund.
The salt shed and then the radio tower. This partnership with Bug Tussle, is that financial partnership or is it something else?
It's more just, will they allow us to put our equipment on their towers? And at no cost or at, rentals, it just depends.
Right.
At one point they had stated that they would allow us to put our emergency communication equipment on those towers at no cost. But that was several years ago and I have no idea if that is, it's never been formally, there's nothing formal about it. So obviously that's something the consultants will have to figure out.
Can you track or have you had any past impacts from the age of the jail and the sheriff's office?
We've had each time the jail inspector comes, he passes us with, I don't know, tight jaw, maybe, and he knows that we're doing our best and the people up there are doing very well with what they've got. But we lack things. We lack a room for a study. We lack a library. We all that stuff is kept out in a hallway right now. And we don't have the space. So each time, and they'd rather see the modular kind of setup, where you have the jailers centrally located, the inmates surrounding them, I guess. That maybe that's a bad word, but around them where they can be observed. So, and they know, the inspector knows how county government works, and but as you pointed out, many counties around us are updating, and the question, I guess, unspoken is, gee, if everybody else can do it, how come you guys don't do it? So.
Do you have identified clear concerns about what happens if you don't make this investment in the jail in the near future? Obviously continuing.
Well, we'll be shut down and we'll have to pay to transport inmates to another facility. We'll have to pay $100 a day or whatever it costs. That'll blow Melissa's budget all to heck then for the LEJC.
What's the cost of a jail?
Oh, 26 million. I don't know.
23 to 40. I think Iowa counties was 40. Does that ring a bell?
Yeah, I would say right in that range. Yeah.
I think Grant County got away with somewhere in the 20s.
I know Pine Valley was in that range, so that's why we borrowed that for Pine Valley. So.
Yep.
But that was a few years ago, and of course, well, there's been inflation, but not dramatic, I guess.
Yep. Yep. Well, and I want to be clear, since we had a friend from the media on here, these are all estimates, so we don't know what they are until you go out there. But that's obviously probably your biggest expense looming out there. Would you say the jail, whatever that comes in at?
I would say, yeah, definitely. Well, the radio tower project, Melissa, is that
they're saying anywhere, 1 to 2 million, depending on how many towers we have to build.
Right, and
each tower is like $350,000 or something.
Yeah.
And we have hills everywhere, so we have to have a lot of towers in order for the radios to work everywhere, which they currently they struggle. There's some pretty big blank spots in our county.
But my question always is, how come the school buses don't have radio contact all over the county? But okay, I don't know. I don't understand radio. So my noise works. The salt shed, about 250,000 is what they came at us with.
Yeah. And then you've got a quote on the emergency services or some order of magnitude there or not yet?
Well, we're looking at
from our perspective, it's we have a $600,000 mark on it on our borrowing from our May 5th 20 borrowing of $600,000 from a county investment perspective.
Mm-hmm.
But the full cost of the project isn't going to be known until we get through the engineering phase.
Yeah. Okay. And most of these, I mean, these aren't certainly not discretionary. Critical services, your jail is critical service, your emergency services, critical service. Sounds like your radio tower is as well.
Yeah, it definitely is.
How about the salt shed? Would you call that critical services?
Well, yes, because we have to maintain it, and it has to be stored. You can't buy it as you need it. Salt, you have to. In fact, the last salt mine or something that was handy closed, so I know they're concerned about getting a salt supply for next year. So you got to get it and store it.
Yep. We jumped around a little bit. Let me ask, have there been past impacts that you can measure that you've seen from the emergency services facility in its current state?
Well, yeah, we had a complete failure of the system because we had ambulances stored in the lower level of the courthouse below the jail, and sewers backed up in the jail and causing nastiness on top of the ambulances, and they had to be taken outside and cleaned. And in fact, one of them was left out too long and several things spoiled. I can't remember what it was, but so that was an immediate impact. And that was probably one of the catalysts that caused us to seriously consider this a critical need.
Darren once told me that he has issues or challenges hiring people. They'll come on board the facility,
Yeah, well,
the kitchenette.
That's right. Because they, when you have full-time 24-hour staffing, you require people to bunk there, and the facilities we have aren't exactly the Ritz-Carlton, so.
So that's a further impact of further delays. Obviously, going to be continued, potentially continued higher
delay, and then the shower facilities, if people are exposed to hazardous materials, right now they'd have to traipse through the county boardroom into the jail area to take a shower. So I don't think that's good either.
Are there delays getting out of there, I assume, right? Don't they have to close the mirrors on the ambulance and back out into the busy street? And
I think they do, yes. Right. Those are Model A garages. We're putting in a big ambulance in them, so.
Okay. Have you had any impacts from not having the salt shed up and running where you need it, where you want it?
Not yet, but Roger is worried, our highway commissioner.
Concern being what you mentioned about the leaching of it. Is that what it would be? Or
leaching into, there's a city well located right there. So There's always groundwater contamination problem in those situations.
Okay.
And yes, there is leaching, so you lose some of your material, sure, by exposure.
What about past or future impacts from the radio towers not being up and running yet?
Well, Melissa can speak to that. I know when I was chairman of that committee, we had several times when we had a down, an outage. We had, remember, an officer down in Lone Rock who wasn't able to talk to dispatch. They were kind of on their own searching for some possibly armed suspect. So that wasn't good. And then we've had fire calls where we had to patch through on actually handheld devices, cell phones, etc., to get, proper communications. So do you know of any other examples, Melissa?
No, those are typical examples. I mean, we've had those situations happen more than once.
Oh, yes.
So,
and
really the deputies not being able to call for backup at times because they can't get signal. And there's areas with no cell service. So they have to leave a situation, try to find somewhere where they can get signal. So anyway, yeah, there's a lot of safety concerns as well as response delays.
Any known or anticipated regulatory risks from your emergency service building? I guess not being constructed in the short term.
Well, just the fact that the municipalities must provide ambulance service, and the county stepped in to assist them a few years ago because there was a need, an unserved area in the county. So, and I think that need still exists. So I guess it's a continuing need.
Okay. So, I mean, it looks like you made the decisions already. You're further invested in the emergency services.
Yep.
Followed by the radio tower.
Uh-huh.
Maybe not any measurable action yet on the jail and the salt shed.
Right. Well, there may be work on the salt shed. I don't know about. I guess another, Clint, do we want to get our Tri-County Airport project listed here?
I've got that.
I think Troy's got that on his.
I do. I have that under discretionary, Marty, because I don't.
That's coming up. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Any other pieces of information that you would need or want to make a decision about moving forward on these, or risk, cost, timeline?
I have a question. This is Peg. So you're telling me that probably within the next 10 years, we're going to have a new sheriff's office?
Yes. Yes, Peg, yes.
Okay, so and it doesn't necessarily have to be where it is now. It could be outside the.
I would move that up probably by about 5 years still. So
by 5 years, you're looking at that. And would there be grants or funding available for that? Well, possibly.
We would hope so, but I don't know. I'm not a grant writer, procurer, but.
Well, I was wondering, did these other counties, did they get grant help or funding of some type to help?
No, not that I'm not aware of any grants that would fund this kind of thing that I've heard of. And Troy, you?
No, I've followed Grant counties a little closer, but Iowa County is under construction now, and I don't believe so. No.
So it would be through tax dollars.
I'm sorry, Peg, go ahead.
Oh, it would just be through tax dollars then that we have to put this new sheriff's office in.
Yeah, and
and what some counties have done, and we haven't done it in this area of the state, is consolidate In other words, 3 counties get together and build one facility for inmate confinement, and not necessarily their jails or their sheriff's departments, but they would consolidate into one jail, I guess you'd say. But it sounds like most of the counties around us are already doing it on their own, so that option is probably gone. And then other counties have built, for instance, Vernon County, and they do it with an eye toward renting space. In other words, they'll take in and we've sent inmates to them on occasion when we were overpopulated, and it's expensive. And I don't know how they do if they're making money on it or not. I don't know.
The other thing that Grant and I think Iowa did was consolidate services. They didn't consolidate across counties, but in Grant County, they have their single building is the jail, the sheriff's office, emergency management, and human service. So they were able to look at all their capital needs and consolidate in that sense. And I think that Iowa County is also, I think they have multiple services in there as well, but I can't be.
Hey, and Peg, I will speak to you directly. There is on your iPad, if you go under Richland County, and somewhere in there is a courthouse jail plan. And this was all scoped out 5 years ago, maybe 6. And actual plans were made about revamping the current facility, expanding the footprint, basically eliminating the parking lot that's there now, and pretty, a feasible attempt at it. And we probably should be re-looking at that. Our problem is every time you build onto the old building, are you just creating more problems than you're solving? And I guess our recent bugaboo with the ambulances would be proof of that. But take a look at that.
I will, thank you.
Okay. Any other thoughts on these 4 items? Larger expenses. Okay. So those are what I was calling your and thanks for the clarification on the emergency services. Mandated facilities tied to mandated services. Sorry, Lee, was that you? Was someone coming in? Okay. I wanted to take a moment too and look at the discretionary services. I'm calling them discretionary, not because they commentary on any value they bring, of course, but because they're not necessarily mandated by the state as part of your work as a county. Discretionary services are enterprises. So Pine Valley, Simons, Tri-County Airport, UW Richland, and then what we're calling other things that you fund, partners that you fund, including us at Regional Planning, Extension, wonderful service, not mandatory, neighborhood housing services. What are those things that aren't mandatory, not in your arm of the state wheelhouse? And think about those critically. And so I have a similar set of questions here. Is there anything that we forgot that we omitted on here? Anything that jumps out at you that we should add?
I think extension.
Yep, I've got extension on there.
I don't think you have Simons. I see it. Never mind.
Simons. Economic development, of course, not.
I missed that.
Yep.
I don't know that all of land conservation is mandatory. That's one thing I don't know, Melissa, if you
The county,
you know if that's all mandatory.
right? No,
like the
so,
farmland preservation.
Right. So there are many things that are mandated by Chapter 92, but like there are things that were mandated as a county. The Land Conservation Committee is mandated to do. And without staff, we wouldn't be able to fulfill those obligations. So it's a little hard to parse out what's mandated and what's not, I guess.
2 to 2.5 of those positions are typically funded by the state, I think, aren't they?
They're partially funded. One is 100%. The second one is supposed to be 70%. And the last one is supposed to be 50%. The state has not met those funding requirements, I don't think, ever, even though it's in the statutes.
Okay.
Yeah, I thank you, Troy, for adding Richland economic development there.
Yeah, and this may be a tough conversation because this is, you know, part of a conversation about value, part of a conversation about funding. So we'll see where it goes. You know, the first question that I find important to ask is, if you had not begun these discretionary initiatives now, would you start today knowing what you know? So how would you respond? We've got,
well, where's the starting point? Are we starting from, we're sitting there with a campus, for instance, for UW Richland, or are we starting before they built the campus?
Yeah, if it was knowing again, you got to think about who you're serving. I think, Marty, that's how I would frame it.
I mean, back if you go back 60 years, yes, we would start it because it was very successful and filled a need. Now, would we start it now? Yeah, I can't answer that at this point.
And that's what we're trying to get at. We stay with things due to having a sunk cost in them. Mm-hmm. So sometimes we double down when we maybe should not.
Right.
So knowing the Richland County population and knowing the enrollment of the college and the relationship with UW-Platteville, if they came to you today, would this be something you embark upon?
I just wonder if we would have to partner up with somebody like Southwest Tech, and not everybody is college, you know, 4-year, 2-year college. I just wonder if at this point, not 60 years ago, but at this point where we are right now, you move some technical things into the Richland campus rather than just having university college credits and so forth. Lots of things. I mean, things that are at Southwest Tech could maybe be partnered with something at the Richland campus, like a dental hygienist, or maybe some probably diesel engine, stuff like that wouldn't work. But there's got to be things out there that at this point, if we could partner, possibly if there's a partner with Southwest Tech to maybe make this more feasible for people that aren't 4-year college students. I think at this point, it would make more sense.
This is Lee. Am I on?
Yes.
Okay. We spoke of this the other day when we had our meeting with the chancellor, or the person from Platteville, and this is something that we brought up, and Marty brought up too. And I totally agree with this. I think this is something, if we were to expand the offerings that we make, I think we would be money ahead by including that and kind of expanding what it is that we do. So that was my only comment. Thank you.
This is Linda. Yes, we've been discussing that. Our biggest problem to that is that we have totally different tax base of how we are funded. And I think we'd be more open to it than Southwest Tech is.
And I'll say this, look at your tax bill and you'll see that there is a portion that is taken out for technical type school funding. So
if you had no buildings and you had never started this endeavor, but they came to you today and said, hey, will you own buildings and rent them to us? Is that an agreement?
I don't think that's a fair question right now.
Okay.
I mean, with COVID and everything, I just feel that that's just not a fair question.
It's like piling on, ganging up and piling on here.
No.
I hate to do it.
How about the airport?
How about what?
The airport, the Viscounty.
Well, I was when I was first invited and exposed and whatever to the Tri-County Airport, I thought, well, this is something that we walk away from because Tri-County, Sauk, Iowa, and Richland, and Iowa already made that decision to walk away. And I thought, well, heck, what good are we getting? And then I did some research, and I think we need to do more research there, but what is the financial impact to the county? And we found out that the Cardinal Glass Corporation has, gosh, I think it was between 35 and 50% of their employees actually reside in our county, and they account for $4 million in salaries. Well, that's a heck of a amount of money coming into the county. Then you ask the question, well, how valuable is that airport to Cardinal Glass? And they have a big hangar down there, and I know they used to fly in and out of there a lot. I'm not sure because we've had flooding there for the last 2 years, on and off, and they may have found other ways to circumvent that problem. And I think the airport's valuable. I cannot tell you how valuable at this point, but we're going to be asked to fund a project, which is can be. You talk about grants, yes, that can be funded through federal money to build a big ditch to drain the thing. And it's not only going to drain the airport, but surrounding properties and get the water away from there. And we'll have to, it's quite I can't remember the funding, was it 90-10 or something like that, Clint?
We're looking at a 5% local share that we would share with Sauk County. Right now, the estimated numbers, and again estimated with the project, is we're looking for Richland County perhaps to come up with about 25,000 yet in this fiscal year or this calendar year 2021. And next year, looking at approximately 119,000 for our part of a local share. And we are working with partners like Cardinal Glass and looking to see if there's other folks that can help support us in that local 5% match. But right now, for the next 2 years for an investment, we'd be looking at $144,000 to help cover right now our appropriated costs for that. And again, that is an estimated amount based on some variables yet that could flex one way or the other.
And I'm wondering, Clint, something I should have asked you before, but can that our share be in kind? In other words, can we have county crew out there doing some of this work and make up that amount? I wonder.
I'm not sure. It would depend on, what the projects look like and how we'd be able to get involved to lower the cost then from other contractors or other.
Don't tell Roger I'm promising him his labor here anyway. Please don't. But it just occurred to me, maybe.
But what I'm wondering is, you go 10 miles further down the road, and those people that are important to Cardinal, I know Cardinal has a lot of employees from Richland County because I work there. You go 10 more miles and you're at the Sextonville Airport. And is that much further out of the way for Cardinal to pick up their people that they bring in and show around and stuff? It's with an airport within 10 miles of that. Is it really beneficial for us to put that kind of money into the Tri-County Airport when we've got one right here in Sextonville, which is maybe 10 miles more for them to drive to pick up their people that they want to bring into the Cardinal plants? You hate to lose the Tri-County, but there's a lot of money going to have to be invested in that for the county, for the taxpayers, when there's another airport very close.
Peg, according to the experts, they can't land the little jets at Sextonville, the airport. The runway isn't long enough.
Is that airport in Lone Rock? Is it working now? I mean, are they able? Yes. Is the restaurant open as well?
No.
Okay.
But if you want to run it, though, they're looking for someone to lease it.
Absolutely not. Just a question.
Sounds like this is a venture that the county is supportive of. There's a return on investment from the Cardinal Glass residences. You're pursuing some funding to repair it.
I mean, I don't know if they spend all that $4 million in the county. Probably not, but I'm not an expert on those things, but we probably need to do some study of that critically.
What about the Simon Center?
It's a good thing. It was built with donated money and a legacy from lifelong, county residents. I'm not sure they were lifelong, but they were very invested in the county, obviously. And it's turned out to be quite a boon for the county. It was suffering early in the COVID thing, but now enrollment's coming back, and it has been quite a thing.
I'm sorry to back up, but just to comment on Marty's point with Cardinal Glass, I found the document that we had received, I believe, through Rich Valatiera, plant manager out of Iowa County. So the payroll that they estimate out of Cardinal Glass is wage distribution going towards towards Richland County is $14.4 million that they're estimating is going into Richland County. And it accounts for about, their labor force is estimated about 345 employees, or 41%. And that reaches across Spring Green IG, Spring Green CG, Spring Green AG, and Spring Green RT, and Spring Green CG Tech Center. So in the 5 different locations in Spring Green, again, they're tracking 345 employees from Richland County, or 41% of their labor force, and then the wage distribution of $14.4 million. Thank you.
Thanks, Clint. I was only 10 million off, so. But this makes it better, 14 million then.
In terms of Pine Valley, I think the answer is yes.
Can I back up and say something about Simons?
Please.
I guess, I mean, I think it is a great facility. I've always felt a little bit strange that the county is funding a business that there are a lot of other businesses of that same kind in our community that are not getting, tax dollars to help them operate. And so it does feel a little bit to me like a conflict that makes me uncomfortable. And we got letters from, you know, some of the other people that operate the workout facilities in Richland Center saying that exact same thing, and I couldn't disagree with them.
Okay.
I just like to say this is true, but of course, Simons was there way before any of those other facilities opened, and we're the only place between Lacrosse and Madison that has a swimming pool, and it's the swimming pool that is actually takes up most of the finances.
Isn't there a swimming pool inside Kickapoo High School that's open to the public?
I think it's closed right now.
They had some major problems.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the only one, and it's legal size for, you know, meets and stuff.
We have a $2 million referendum on the April ballot up here for that. I just wanted to add on with the airport. You know, Iowa County just pulled out, I think it was this past year. I just wonder, you know, I wonder why they pulled out of the airport.
I can only speak from.
I know that obviously we have people who. Go ahead. Sorry.
My apologies, Supervisor Murphy Lopez. I was just going to say, in to the question on why Iowa County pulled out, I believe in memory serves in conversation with Administrator Larry Berkey down there. I know that they were trying to focus their expenses and their attention, I believe, on the airport that's located down by Mineral Point, which they have an emergency evac out of. So to try to appropriate and prioritize that, they with budget constraints, it was in their best interest to pull out of the partnership with the Tri-County.
How about the partners that you fund? And you can be honest here, folks. We've got, like most counties, there's outside partners that you support, including regional planning.
Well,
extension.
Can I talk about UW Extension, please?
Yeah.
And you know, we've critically looked at UW Extension, and we have cut the budget there. It seems like every year, and we're down one agent. We used to have the whatever they call it, the can't remember that term. Troy, can you? The
community natural resource economic.
There we go. That agent. We dropped that, and we've cut the Chelsea Waunakie's position that's down to 80%, and then we share. We're 50-50 on the ag agent, so and that brings us down to 4-H, and that's one we won't give up. We're not going to give it up, and I believe it's essential. Okay, it's not mandatory, but I think we'd be in hot water if we announced on the steps of the courthouse that we're doing away with 4-H.
Well, I just want to speak up with just my thoughts on UW Extension. I agree with what you're saying, Marty. I think the 4-H thing is very popular, and that would be very difficult to cut. Same thing with our ag, you know, our halftime ag person. I'm not convinced on the what was it called, families and relationships or personal. I can't remember.
Living or
yeah, I'm just not convinced on that position that it's really that necessary. I mean, I think Chelsea's I'm not talking about the individual holding the spot, because I think she is extremely capable and very smart person. I'm talking about the content of what is provided. I don't necessarily see a lot of community demand for that. So
Well, you mean a lot of women aren't doing home canning any longer? I mean, that's what the position originally started as, 50 years ago. But it has evolved, and she does the childhood. I can't remember the name of that program, but it was dealing with how to teach your child how to deal with anger, I guess it was, and something along that line. Even received national awards for that. She has another program where it's save money, establish a fund for your children. She's received national recognition for that. The other day, well, not the other day, several months ago, a community member brought forth concerns about what is the county's response to Black Lives Matter, basically, diversity and inclusion. And Chelsea graciously accepted that challenge and is heading up that task force. And they've had several meetings, and they developed dialogue and a set of action plans. So that'll be presented to the board here very shortly. So she does a lot of things that probably we don't broadcast, and we should do a better job of that.
I think they're all redundant. I mean, I don't think the major farmers here go to the extension anymore for their help. They have much bigger operations than what's happening. I think what Chelsea does is wonderful. I think some of it could be done through Health and Human Services. Even though I grew up with 4-H, I don't personally see it. Sort of like closing the Meals on Wheels probably for the community. I don't see it as a major hitting that many children in the county.
Okay. So we'll try to catch some of these. We've talked a little bit about ongoing expenses. I know there's operational and capital expenses for some of these. And those are numbers we can pull from the budget. Pine Valley's in good shape. Does the county fund the physical structure of the Simons Complex? Do you own that?
Yes.
Yeah.
With the city and county share.
Okay.
So what I'm tracking for expenses that are brought to my attention right now with Simon Center is there's a request for 2022 for remodeling of the locker room, a total of $25,000, which we would share with the city, making our portion of it $12,500 if it were to go forward. With the University of Richland, they have provided us with a 10-year proposal on capital improvement plans, which I believe totals to about $3.5 million over the next 10 years.
And Clint, has any progress been made then, or on the marrying of Simons with the gymnasium at the campus? That was in the plans at one time.
I don't know where that project, I'm not tracking as a request as of right now. I believe in conversations is that there is a building design, but it would require commitment from us in the city. And if memory serves, there potentially could be other shareholders that would be willing to help contribute. But at this point, I'm not tracking as a plan right now of when on a timeline that's going to be undertaken.
Pine Valley is brand new, right? It's in solid shape.
Yes, brand new.
Yeah.
Would we start it today? I believe we would. Although, as Linda pointed out, it is in competition with other facilities in the county, and it was built with the understanding that it and Schmidt, which is the other major facility. Harvest Guest Home is another smaller, much smaller. There may be other smaller units out there too, but it was built with the understanding that the beds afforded would meet the needs of the county, and not exceed them, but meet the needs of the county. That for the I would say the Medicaid funded portion of bed space, the other portion of Pine Valley that is patient funded, that is 100% filled to occupancy, and I think there's a waiting list for that one. That's entirely profitable, that part of it. Well, in fact, the whole thing is profitable, but the Medicaid funding has increased this year, and that's great. And then actually the COVID help has helped us. So we're doing very well financially at Pine Valley.
Last several years since we built the new facility, we've gone from providing a tax levy subsidy to Pine Valley to them returning money to the general fund each year. So that's a significant swing.
Right. But don't forget, all of you, that the most significant portion of our borrowed money, the debt that the county owes, resides at Pine Valley. Mm-hmm. So, okay.
Correct.
All right.
Yeah. And so our capital investment, our bonding is there. It's it's over $1 million for the next few years that we're going to be doing to cover their debt services, and then it kind of goes up once we get past some of our other borrowings to up to about $1.5 million, a little over that in future years, based on our current bond payment scheme.
Yeah, Van, you're back in.
Yes.
And I apologize, I'm jumping around. I think I'm kind of following the conversation. I was trying to go up and down this column. We covered most of the would you start and ongoing expenses, except for the partners. We talked about extension, maybe some redundancies. You just started economic development, so that kind of answers that. What is I can't remember what you put into economic development, Clint.
We contribute half with the city. I can't remember what the budget is off the top of my head for this year. I think it's about 100 and.
Actually, more than half, isn't it, Clint?
That's okay.
I'll have to track it down. I don't have it off the top of my head here. Let me see if I can find it.
And then extension, I know is probably, well, it used to be larger, so you compared it back. But tell me about starting any of these partnerships. We've talked about extension. You just started economic development. The other two I had was neighborhood housing services and regional planning.
And another is Hidden Valleys, which we have talked about ending our relationship. So,
okay,
a small one. It's small. I understand that.
Okay.
Are we?
We cut way back with neighborhood housing. Are we at 7,500 or less now? I think it's 7,500.
Yeah, I think it's not much more. I thought
it was around there. Yeah. Okay.
And are we part of the library, David?
We are, but that's a state mandated funding we have to provide.
Thank you. Spoken like a member of the library board, or at least former member, or current member. I can't remember.
Current member.
Thank you.
Let's walk down, if we could, and look at I have return on investment from these different initiatives as maybe another decision point. We talked, of course, about Tri-County. I had heard mentioned some years ago of a return on investment study or an economic study. ready for UW of Richland. And COVID has wrinkled and thrown a wrench in everything, but the students there, are commuters and or foreign exchange students typically. Is that accurate?
We had quite an international presence in prior years, not now, and it's been dwindling.
Well, it wasn't dwindling until COVID. It was at full at 40 to 50.
Even after Patrick left, Linda?
Yes. Yeah. Patrick wasn't, I mean, it started with Tom Oates years ago.
Uh-huh.
Do many of the students, professors live in the city?
No. 1, 2, let's see. Spring Green. Well, they have, you know, with Raycross, they cut us so much that we weren't allowed to have any new hires. So now everybody's just about part-time. So they go between several campuses. So a lot of them live in Madison, go to Rock, Baraboo, us. There's not been an investment by the state in personnel and especially in faculty at the campus.
But talking about return on investment, though, if you look at the alumni of campus, you know, they're heavily represented in our community, and including the mayor, including the.
Oh, it's been a wonderful thing for the community.
So that's hard to measure, but it's measured. You know, it's there. It's valuable.
Well, there have been and I did have the most recent economic impact. It used to have quite a big economic impact, and I have to admit I don't have those figures on it right now.
Yeah.
How about Simons? Any kind of economic? Do you get folks coming far and wide for swimming?
Yes.
Meets.
Yeah. Yes, and membership. Yeah.
Okay. In Pine Valley, you said returns money to the county.
Yeah, if you discount the investment,
the debt service.
Yeah. If they had to pay rent, they probably wouldn't be able to do that.
So the return on investment of your partner services, most of these are kind of long-term. Tourism is long-term, planning is long-term, economic development is long-term.
Yeah.
Although our economic development director did capture our grant funds that we were in jeopardy of losing if we couldn't get a plan together. So that was a pretty significant impact in a very short term.
Yep. The CDBG money you're talking about.
Yep.
CDBG close.
Yep.
Is what we call it.
But the tax levy for UW Extension this year is 184 grand.
That you're paying into UW Richland?
UW Extension.
Extension.
Here's one that we just talked about with Simons. Could anyone else do this? Does the county, you know, one of your core values was engaging in discretionary services when the market won't work for you, when there's nobody else doing that. So that's one of the questions we had here. I guess, is could anyone else offer the service that you're funding or providing?
Well, not the pool, but other than that, I suppose they could.
Well, that was the one actually that I had marked as a maybe. I think it was Melissa said that, and it's from an operational building, maybe not the building, but the operations. Is that right? Or what was it, Melissa?
Well, the pool and the classes, there's nobody else that offers Silver Sneakers classes. They offer Silver Sneakers to come and use elliptical, but no classes.
So you all fund operations out there, is that right? But you.
Yeah.
A small portion of Simon's overall budget is county and city subsidy. The rest of it they generate from operations.
Okay.
And then of course capital for whatever building needs there are.
Right.
And they do have a foundation for a lot of the capital.
Yes, the foundation has poured a lot of money into the facility.
Okay.
And Troy, I've got the budget document open still. The Simon's contribution is operating ongoing expense would be 34 grand for the county. And then for economic development, it's 73.
Yeah. So impacts to the county if any of these services were taken away, how would you identify? Let me strike that. If you withdrew from these services in your role, this is simply the county. So Clinton just mentioned the decision by Iowa County and the basis for that. If on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different activities, the county evaluated on any one of them that it wasn't a place you want to be, what would the impact be to the county?
UW Richland, I don't think we can withdraw from. We're stuck there, not stuck there. We are participating in that as the property owner for as long as the state wants to continue the operation. Is that correct?
That's my understanding, David.
Yeah.
We talked about the economic loss of Tri-County. What about the Simon Center? There's two pieces here. You own the building, so that's your asset, right? And then the funding, which is kind of a wash. If pulled out of building ownership, what would happen to the impact?
Well, the city would have to take it over, and I'm sure they would if the county backed out.
I don't know.
If both of us back out, it could be sold as a private facility because it was built that way. In case that
are there any restrictions on it because it was built with donations that we know of, or was that something we'd have to research?
We'd have to research that, but I know it's a kind of a separate little island there or peninsula on our land there, so it can be sold. It's not part of the leased arrangement, apparently.
No, it is county-owned land, and we had to get release from the UW Board of Regents to be able to use that piece of the land because it is surrounded by the land that the Regents lease for the UW Platteville Richland.
That's right.
So they lease it. You own it.
Because it is county-owned land surrounded by them, I don't know if it would be possible for us to sell it either.
But they lease it, and you're the owner.
They have what is a 99-year lease agreement than when they built the facility, something like that. Linda, do you know?
I think that's right. But you're talking about the UW right now,
right?
Yeah,
the UW property, yeah.
Yeah.
The big chunk of property.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's not a lease we can terminate, is my understanding.
Right, right.
Going back to the Tri-County Airport, if the county pulled out, I guess I'm not convinced. I don't know a lot about the airport. I've never been down there. But knowing that Iowa County pulled out and that we're still in and Sauk County is still in, do we not know that Sauk County wouldn't just stick with it?
Yeah,
like, would it really be gone if we pulled out? I guess that's I'm just throwing it out there for people. I just don't know.
Isn't the operational funding much more heavily weighted to Richland and Sauk? And Iowa was a much slimmer piece. Is that accurate? Or?
No, Iowa and Richland shared the same amount. I think Sauk had the biggest portion. We were, I can't remember the exact, Clint, I'm sure has this number in mind, but then when Iowa dropped out, we were asked to assume a larger role, which we have not done.
previous, when we had Iowa and Sauk County assumed a 90 or a 95.5% share, and then we assumed essentially another 25% share in Iowa County, 25% share. With Iowa County pulling out, we've retained this year for operational expenses a 25% share, and Sauk County took on a 75% share for this current year.
That's a matter of ongoing discussion with them, isn't it, Clint?
We have not updated our ordinance, which is also our agreement language, on what that looks like going forward. We've had action from the committee to sort it out. By ordinance, it's kind of a tasking that goes to the Sauk County Corporation Council. The Sauk County Corporation Council has kind of had some transition in that office right now. They've just brought on a full-time Corporation Council. Prior to that, they were using, they were contracted through Von Briesen, I believe. So it's something that's still in the works.
So Sean, to answer, or to further your thought process, if we walked away with the airport and no, it would still be there, would we still benefit from it? Sure, as much as we're benefiting now. So what, and I've gone through this process in my own mind. So why don't we just walk away? Well, we wouldn't be a very good neighbor, both to our residents down in that area and then to Sauk County, the people who are trying to sustain this thing. We wouldn't be a very good neighbor to, I guess when I look at economic development, you know, we're looking at a variety of things that we can do in the county, right? To stimulate business, to bring income basically into the county. And I, for the life of me, I haven't identified anything yet that will bring in $14 million a year. So that to me is a significant chunk of money and something we shouldn't walk away from. And of course it would still be there. Yes, it would.
Is Jason on? Because I think it is a big economic development potential.
No,
Lots of companies looking for an airport in the middle of nowhere. Yeah.
Well,
no, I mean the other way around.
Sauk County has a little different skin in the game than we do, because that's where the Cardinal Glass people keep their jets.
Right.
Yeah.
And Richland County don't have many jets.
We could get one.
Let's borrow some money. Yeah.
So,
Did Land's End have any jets there?
No.
No.
let me hone us in here a little bit. We got about 15 minutes. How do you see? Do you have any concerns? Do you see any conflicts with continuing to fund these, either the capital facilities that are coming down the road or the operations? And are they competing with your mandatory core services?
There will definitely be capital needs at the UW Richland. There have been for some time. We've been putting them off. If the decision is made by the state to continue it as a fully ongoing enterprise, we would likely have to make a capital investment to modernize some of the neglected facilities out there.
And that's part of that 10-year plan, I assume?
Yeah.
Is there a decision there? Is there a timeline for that?
No, I think it's just been put off.
Yeah.
I think everyone's afraid to talk about it right now.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. How about
the other thing?
Got 144,000 potentially for the flood relief. Sorry, Sean, go ahead.
No, I was just going to mention too, you know, our debt capacity right now is 52 million and we have 26 million of that tied up. Most of it in Pine Valley, but there's about 5 million of other debt we have out there. So I think your question's a really good one, because there's no way we can fund all of this. And, you know, all of them, you know, have good points about them, but I think at some point we as a county board have to prioritize these, because we can't have a new jail and sheriff's office, you know, if we're also going to, you know, redo the campus or, you know, all these other things on here that are all good projects. At some point we have to prioritize. We can't even meet our debt capacity. We wouldn't even be able to handle it all.
Well, I think if you bought a jail and a radio tower, you'd be at capacity with Pine Valley, it looks like. So
Can I ask, does anybody know when we're done paying for Pine Valley? How many more years?
That's in 2036.
Wow, that's a long time.
So
only 15 years. Come on.
Any large capital improvement projects at the airport, aside from the 144,000 ish over 2 years for the flood reduction?
Well, that would be a project that would be done in 2022. The total project itself is what is it, a $10 million project? Let me pull up my spreadsheet number. It's roughly a $9.5 million in improvements with 100,000 in land acquisition, so about $9.6 million total package, of which again we're picking up 5% of. The project is to raise the runway, raise taxiways, redo the lighting, and then add the drainage ditch from the airport down to Bear Creek. So then past that, I'm unaware of other projects past the current proposed group of projects.
So that's around 480, if I got that right.
Wait, did we still get federal money for that?
Yes, the share on it is 90% federal,
yeah,
and then 5% state, and then 5% local. And of that 5%, then we would have our share with Sauk County, and then any other partners that would be willing to help contribute towards it.
Right.
So the 480K would be the total local share, and our portion of that would be potentially half or less of that.
Correct. Yep. We're looking at about 119,000 for 2022 and 25,000 for 2021. But that's without consideration of potential other partners coming into it. Mm-hmm. That's also consideration that we're splitting our portion, our 5% with Sauk County at a 75-25% apportionment.
Okay.
Now, a question that I have is, why did Iowa County leave the Tri-County Together project? I'd like to know that. And the money that we get from the people that work at Cardinal Glass, whether or not we support the airport, they're still there. Because that airport does not affect any of them. They're just, line workers for the most part, I would think. So that's something worth looking into, I think.
We've touched base a little bit on that, Lee. I think you were dialed in and out. If you want to hang on a bit afterwards, we can chat about that.
Sure.
Build in. Long-term capital expenses at Simons. We've talked about the lockers. Any big structural issues?
Well, we redid the roof. That was a big deal. And
there's a big plan for a big expansion, but I think it's on hold now. I mean,
right.
The big expansion would make it much more handicap accessible, and it's that connection project that was mentioned to connect it to the UW Platteville Richland Gymnasium would have big benefits for both facilities if it were able to be done.
But wasn't there a Americans with Disabilities Act component to that whole plan, though? Maybe we are going to have to do something there.
It would improve access dramatically. I don't know that there's anything we're in danger of violating. Has there been any conversation about that recently, Linda?
Not that I know, but I'm not on that board right now. But
I am, and no. The answer to that is no. We haven't talked about that.
So I'd like to, if I could, back us up, pull us away from the detail. We've covered a lot of capital funding projects. We've identified that everything you need and or want to fund is beyond your capacity for the next couple of years, potentially out 10 or 15 years by the time you pay off Pine Valley if you invest in a jail. What do you all need to hear to make a decision on what these priorities would be? It's not strictly a return on investment, right? There's a lot of things we're passionate about that have meaning. If it was just a return on investment conversation, you wouldn't have funded Pine Valley. That's not why we fund nursing homes at the counties. So there are things that are important and valuable to you that are beyond the dollar value. So what do you need to hear from county residents or each other to prioritize these, knowing that we cannot do them all?
We've had feedback from selected folks in selected instances before. Typically, we propose cutting something and then support comes out of the woodwork and everybody wrings their hands and we back off. That's been our process over the last several years. It would seem if we had some kind of organized process to gather input from a wider cross-section of the county that we represent, that might give us more solid data than the individual pleas from people who are proposed to be on the chopping block at budget time.
I agree with Dave. And I think it's also really interesting to know where county board members sit across the whole spectrum, all 21. You know, how would each person rank things? I mean, mine's just one voice out of 21, and it's very interesting when I see everyone else's rankings listed out there too and see them averaged out. That's very helpful. But I agree with Dave. It's helpful to have the public too. That's going to inform, I think, where each of us probably prioritizes things.
It was very instructive in our most recent budget cycle, the surveys that were put together and how Clint coordinated the information for us to see how the priorities of board members aligned as we were formulating the budget. So I think you're right on target, Sean. If we were looking bigger picture and got the same kind of info from board members and then from the public, yeah.
Well, and my answer to that, gentlemen, is, and Linda and Melissa and who else is on Peg, ladies that I know of. Anyway, my answer to that would be that's why we're elected. And 21 people representing various parts of the county ought to be able to come to a consensus on these issues.
I just have one question. Our bond rating hasn't been good, and part of it is that they look at us and they don't like that we have a nursing home, and yet that is one of our high priorities. But isn't that one of our problems?
Mm-hmm. In their opinion,
it is one of them. But another thing listed, I think, in that most recent confirmation of our A3 bond rating was not taking on more new debt.
So let me, we've got about 7 minutes. You've given me some things to chew on. And I think this lends itself to where I wanted to go next. One of the things that always needs to happen with a plan is that it's got to stay alive. And certainly given the conversations that you're having here, the potentially iterative nature of making decisions about large projects, it would be very hard, if not impossible, to line out these 8 or 9 projects and assume we can just say this is priority 1, 2, 3, and 4. Because the other thing is you may not be able to bond for them based on your priorities, right, due to your capacity. So, so here's a process I'd like to suggest and have you implement moving forward, and I think it'll help. You've seen this probably. Plan, Do, Study, Act. It's a cycle to make sure that what you've done now is not something that you do now and then return to it in 5 years, having done nothing between now and 5 years. It's a process that can be managed with pretty minimal labor. What we're in right now is the planning part. Purpose, aspirations, values. The big part of this is your key challenges and how to overcome them. If we don't actually identify how to overcome every challenge, my hope is we find some decision-making points, some way to make a decision as you move forward. Once we get this plan wrapped up, there's what we call the data section. Your department heads have to be engaged. They're going to have departmental action plans that will help you implement some of this stuff. Communicating with them and rolling out where you want the county to go. Then there's operational and effectiveness stuff that we said. Some of that is already underway, of course. It doesn't need to wait till the plan gets done. Part of that doing too is maybe what you talked about, furthering this conversation about the capital investments. and maybe it's the process that you've given good feedback on that Clint led you through at the budget time. Maybe that is something that needs to happen with a little more frequency and not in November, maybe earlier in the budget year. That'll align you to move forward. On some regular basis, there's this piece where you have to stop and see if you've accomplished anything and what you've accomplished and take stock. I'll recommend in the document here some level of a management team, a monitoring team, someone to actually watch what's going on, some level of quarterly touch base. What have we accomplished? What have we not accomplished? Are we measuring progress? Or like I said at the last meeting, you may not have data on much of this stuff. If you don't have data, you don't know if you have met a benchmark, but you can start creating some baseline data for measuring your performance on some of these things. I think it's really critical to celebrate success. I think when you make a big decision on your ambulance garage or whatever, a ribbon cutting, an open house, these are big things for your community, even in-house in your departments. And then identifying barriers so you can figure out how to work around them. It sounds like a lot of work, but it can be done pretty lean and pretty quickly as you move through the process. And then what do you do? Well, as you wrap up each initiative or action project, what have you, you revise, right? So the plan, do, study, act, this act portion is you either say, well, that thing worked really well. We're absolutely going to adopt that practice. It's going to be standard operating procedure moving forward. Or you say, well, that sort of worked, but we need to adapt it. Adopt, adapt, or abandon. This thing that we're doing doesn't work. We need to stop and do something different. So I'd be happy to help frame that out. And in fact, I did drop in a note here. If we can be of service in talking to your departments about this process, what needs to happen next. If you need a third party or would like a third party to help kind of track your progress, measure where you've been, help identify that management team, whatever that would be, we're here to continue to help after the planning process. But I really hope some level of kind of ongoing group of folks meet between now and the next 3 to 5 years. It's a quick way to lose track of progress. And as you all have mentioned, one of the biggest challenges is 3 to 5 years from now, you all won't be here. Some of you won't run again, right? That happens. Your departments will turn over. It's really hard without some intentional action to keep momentum going for this sort of thing in an organization where there's constant turnover. And so again, if there's a role we can play, respecting your authority, autonomy, the thing needs to be in your voice. If we can be a convener, a tracker of data, whatever this thing would be, we'd be very happy to be a part of that. So I've got some work cut out for me in putting some of these notes together and figuring out how to capture all of you said. But I guess I wanted to pause then here. Any last thoughts that you want me to hear before I move away and start pulling together some of this?
No, but we thank you, Troy, for all you're doing here for us. So you're making us actually think about the future. So
what are the next, oh, sorry to interrupt. I was just going to ask, what are the next steps?
Yep. So, and I should mention too, you've probably seen a flyer. We're doing planning work around the county. We currently have about 5 meetings kicking off in Richland Center. So one of the things we're trying to do in partnership with Jason Glassbrenner and the county board folks who are representing some of the cities are really making sure that if there's something that's overlapping with Lone Rock in the county or Richland Center in the county, we pick it up in these meetings and we bring it to you. So we're going to continue down that, Sean, and make sure that behind the scenes we can align these initiatives. David Turk is on our steering committee for the Richland Center planning work, so we're also pulling him in and that. For this particular project, I'm going to try to pull together as best I can these notes into some draft document to share with the rest of the board next Tuesday. We've had about 8 hours together, so I'll need at least 6 hours on your agenda next Tuesday. Your laughter is coming crystal clear. No, I'll make it concise. We'll pull it together for you. I think it's going to be important to share with the rest of the board what the process has looked like, but we'll mainly focus on the things we've heard from you, where you're going to move forward. And then, have a candid conversation. There is work still to be done about these big capital investments that you have to make. That's nothing that we can solve here, but there's definitely going to be more work in prioritizing that.
And then are we adopting a plan or on Tuesday? Are we giving feedback on it? And how's that all work?
Yep. My thinking is if I can have I maybe have a handout for you by Tuesday, but a presentation to show the rest of the county board what we've been through and some big takeaways. The April meeting, 20th, I'm not sure what the date is. That's my target, Sean, to have a draft document to you. And probably you'll want to sit with it for at least that period to the next month, have folks digest it and look through it, send me comments. If we need to meet, we can do so. Considering half the board was unable to join us, they may want to spend some time with it. And even you who've been here week after week probably want to as well. So I want to make sure you have time to look at it. And then, I think some level of adoption, acceptance, something that binds you to this thing would be important. If that's in May or whenever that is moving forward. I guess that was my vision. Now I work for you all. What would you like to see? That works.
So I take it this is kind of like you say, it's a draft, kind of a living document for a period of time, and who's going to own the editorship of that? How's that going to work? Yeah, I mean, it's a living document until you update it, Steve, 3 to 5 years from now. That's how we make progress.
We're done.
Yeah, I'm going to recommend, Steve, who titles and types of folks who would be good to be on a sort of a management committee, steering committee, monitoring committee, whatever you want to call it. You all will choose who you want to choose, but we've learned some lessons about how to make this thing continue living on and going through. Again, one thing I'll offer, if you need somebody to meet with you quarterly, track your data, ask some hard questions, follow up on things, and just kind of monitor progress, that's something I would be happy to do. We'd happy to help out there. So, but there's definitely got to be somebody to watch that and track that stuff.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Troy.
Yes.
It's Floyd Bartow. I waited till the end because I'm not a board member. But if the board would entertain my input a little bit, I understand it's been a long meeting, but I heard a lot of discussions about UW Richland and having a 99-year lease on that. With the student housing up for sale for just shy of $3 million, who reaps the reward from that sale? Is that part of the 99-year lease, or was that purchased by the UW system themselves?
That property is separately owned by the foundation.
And there won't be any money. They put more money into it. They're just trying to get their money out.
Thank you.
And just for clarification, it's a 75-year lease that began in 1967.
So it's up in 2042.
So, okay, everyone, thank you for your attendance tonight and your thoughts. Thank you, Troy.
Thank you.
This is Lee. I'm sticking around.